animation memes. They are repetitive, inherently meaningless,
and I love them so much!
An animation meme, in simple terms, is essentially a viral audio clip that could be from anything, a song, a movie, a skit, a play, and that audio is taken by one animator, given an expressive animated sequence with their original characters, and that piece of art is then passed down from animator to animator and remastered in that animator's own unique vision and own unique take on the audio.
The narrative tone and mood in animation memes varies depending on the artist. They can be whimsical and happy, they can be edgy and angsty, they can be depressing and gloomy, some are satire and humorous, while others romantic or oh dear God.
I think one of the things that appeals about animation memes is the general simplicity and deliberate storytelling and or energetic fluidity that they kind of give off. And because when you're making animation memes, you're the one in control, you can practically do whatever the hell you want. And because of the general simplicity and structure that animation memes follow, mixed with the unoriginal nature of using other people's meme templates as reference for your own animations, animation memes are the perfect formula for beginner animators to become invested in. They're simple, short, straight to the point, and they're great practices if you want to have a future in animation, or even if you just enjoy it as a hobby. If you're wanting to exercise a certain vibe, like horror or angst, you can select an animation meme from the community, and you can practice delivering compelling scenes and stories. Having access to a large selection on the internet of different narratives and concepts and feelings is like having a library to select a topic of narrative to practice illustrating cinema, or it can be just a simple hobby. While animation memes are typically more of a hobby-like activity, given the fact that most of the music is copyrighted, therefore it's not the most efficient source of income, animation itself is certainly not just a hobby for me. However, I wouldn't be here having accomplished some of the projects that I have or gotten to the level that I have at animation if it wasn't for the fact that I got extremely hyperfixated on animation memes as a little kid. The fast-paced, bright, stimulating content definitely appealed to my young, whimsical brain. And I can easily say that my love for animation memes absolutely blossomed us into something a little bit more ambitious in my late teen years. I ended up slowing down on animation meme posts and animating entire songs, which also was extremely fun. And now I have much larger animation-oriented projects that I'm working on. The point that I'm trying to make by yapping about this train of events in my life is that there seems to be a large portion of people that think animation memes are kind of frivolous and like not exactly productive or constructive, which to some extent that is true. Animation memes may seem silly and repetitive and inherently meaningless, but I don't think that's the entire truth. It's an easily digestible and easy to illustrate formula of content that absolutely promotes creativity and growth as an artist. And if you like cartoons or animation, or you want to pursue it as some sort of profession, I absolutely encourage getting invested in animation. They're like little easily achievable animation exercises that help strengthen your ability as an animator to convey certain concepts. But there's more to this niche, obscure little corner of the internet than just fun and laughing and creation. There's absolutely an opposing side that has their criticism for the formula and structure of animation memes, and I was one of them. When I was a little laddie, I distinctly remember making a series of videos justifying why I didn't like animation memes at the time, and it was pretty funny because the predominant reason presented was that memes weren't original. Now, to be fair, you're allowed to not like animation memes. You're allowed to not feel drawn to a community solely based off of replicating each other. That's fine. But first of all, you don't have to follow the crowd. You can make your own original animation memes for other people to be inspired off. We wouldn't be receiving original animation memes if it wasn't for the original animator, so we do rely on originality in order to create our own originality. But you also really don't need to justify disliking something as generally not that deep as a bunch of cartoons. In hindsight, I do find a lot of commentary ranting on and on about why you dislike something that's really not that deep to be kind of boring, just because of the fact that you don't need to provide a series of semantics and data to justify disliking something that literally impacts nobody. It's not that deep. It's a cartoon. The structure of making a whole video where you talk about disliking something that really is inconsequential, that is what half of commentary is, if you're not talking about something atrocious and horrible that is going to pollute your psyche. And if I were to sit here and complain about the fact that that's what half of commentary is, I'd just be repeating the same thing I'm doing in these old videos, complaining that a certain form of content just isn't to my taste because I don't relate to it. So I won't deny that videos like this absolutely do have a right to exist. However, I just don't personally relate to or agree with these old animation meme videos anymore, so I will talk about them a little bit. Because they do mainly contain the opinions of most artists in the community who don't really relate to animation memes, so they're a perfect example of what I'm referring to. The first and main point brought up was that memes aren't original, which is the sole definition of what a meme is in the first place. So it was basically just me clicking on things that I didn't relate to because I was bored and had nothing to do. Something that a lot of people forget is that in the realm and creation of crafting, most of the time beginners are gonna need something to reference if they want to get anywhere. You can't do everything at once the first time you sit down and make an animation. You gotta take baby steps. If it's something that you're truly invested in and really want to master because it's something you're passionate about, you might need to start small. And creating your own camera angles and narratives can be a little bit overwhelming if you can barely make a character's hand move at your current level. So the idea that it's shameful to create something unoriginal and to reference someone else is quite ignorant, because that's how most art progresses. You do exercises that are already laid out for you before you go and try to tackle something humongous, i.e. a purely original piece. That's how most art colleges function. So the entire argument that animation memes are unoriginal is valid if it's a reason that makes you not want to click on it in your algorithm, but to complain about it as if it's a negative thing is just kind of ignorant. And second of all, this is something that I mentioned previously. In order for there to be concepts for people to copy in the first place, they need to come from somewhere, hence people who create original animation memes. So if you are one of those people who feels more ambitious and you want to create something completely different, animation memes are a perfect formula for that as well. We need some animators to create original things for us to copy if we want reference for improvement and exercises. And I'm only bringing this up because it was very clearly obvious if you look back at these old videos that I was saying a lot of these things because I was personally more invested in creating original camera shots and narratives for my animations, so it was just biased because it's what I wanted to do.
But animation memes
Also have room for that because you can make an original animation meme for other people to copy. It is pretty silly. The backbone of the video falls apart pretty quickly if you think about it for a moment. And then I also go on and start talking about how the animation meme community has a ridiculous amount of drama, but humans are prone to gossiping when they're bored. I don't think it's an animation meme issue, more so an issue with humans that we have yet to evolve from. The second video about animation memes I created, however, was actually talking about the fact that when animation memes were first created, and the community was developing, people were more prone to creating original animation memes that all have different concepts, and there being a significant amount of diversity between memes and narrative. Like the Boba Date meme was usually copied and imitated from animator to animator, however, the concept and narrative of it was a character going on a date. The Losing My Mind animation meme always was copied and imitated from animator to animator, but it had a very specific scenario, which was a character that was typically in a small, enclosed, claustrophobic space, in center shot, banging on the screen like it's a thing of glass and they're being watched by the audience on YouTube. Medicine and animation memes usually follow the same formula, however, it typically involved a character having wings kind of blossom out of their back. Basically, what a lot of people would complain about is the fact that while animation memes were typically created to be copied and imitated, there was diversity in narrative and intellectual diversity within creation that created variety to browse through that was very, very strong and prominent in the dawn of animation memes. And what I was really yapping about in this video, and what I noticed a lot of other people would be really frustrated by, is the fact that when 2019 to 2021 kind of hit, the structure of animation memes kind of shifted. There would be an uprise of dozens and dozens and hundreds of animation memes that were kind of centered around hyperpop and typically had an identical aesthetic and narrative. Nothing was really going on. It was just a character existing and bopping their head up and down. There was no variety. 20 different animation memes that all had different titles and different songs, all would have the same sequence going on. You could probably remove the audio and replace it with a different animation meme, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the animation memes and what the concept actually is, because they're all following an identical format of a character just kind of existing in a bright, hyper-stimulating space without there actually being any true events that make it stand out. This new formula of animation memes was kind of like watching the same animation meme over and over again. Now, I remember me and the homies hating the way these looked back when we were little fetuses. And while I do still find the formula personally kind of tedious, and most of the animators I subscribe to don't really follow this formula just because I'm not that interested in it, I will make the same argument that I made before, that not everybody is immediately ready to create a ridiculously ambitious or an overly complicated and rich with detail and storytelling animation. Some people really just need to make their character's head bounce and not have way too much to focus on. Some people are just beginners, or some people are just trying to exercise and they don't necessarily want to create this over-the-top, crazy masterpiece that contains so much storytelling that it stands out. Like, sometimes people just need a really simple, straight-to-the-point, bare-bone formula to just get the hang of producing movement. So these repetitive head bops that all mainly follow aesthetic, they absolutely have a space in the community. I think I was mainly becoming a grumpus because it was harder to find newer animation memes that were rich in narrative and diversity. Like, the whole aesthetic animation meme formula was kind of trending at the time, but trends come and go. It was bound to end eventually. Having a structure and formula of animation memes that you can follow that doesn't require way too much calculation is incredibly valuable if you're just stepping into the scene. Or even if you do have a sophisticated skill set when it comes to producing animations and you do know a lot about the craft, what if you're employed and you just want to make an animation, but you don't have the time to produce something too exquisite and crazy? These 2019 to 2021 aesthetic formulas absolutely do have value for animators. Now, again, if I were to sit down and watch an animation meme, I'd way rather sit down and put on the girls animation meme or the Flora's Lava animation meme, where it does happen to come from the older animation days, and it's much more rich with concept and packed full of narrative and storytelling. I would personally enjoy it because then you get to sit down and you get to really see an animator recreate something in their own style. Of course, I still would prefer to watch something a little bit more, in my opinion, immersive than just an animation that is purely based on aesthetic and doesn't really have anything that stands out about it. Although not only does a lot of this mainly boil down to preference, but acting like there's a right and wrong way to animate, especially when everybody here is at a different level, is incredibly snobby and arrogant in my opinion. Again, I'm always going to prefer older animation memes. They typically had more concept to them, they typically were more immersive, and I do find the whole solely relying on aesthetics while your character isn't really doing anything to be kind of boring. I don't personally watch it on my TV when I get home from work and crack open a beer. I probably gravitate more towards the old ones, but there's no right or wrong way to make an animation, and these aesthetic animation formats absolutely have a place where they're very beneficial for some people in the animation community, depending on their skill levels, or the animator's schedule if they're incredibly busy. So again, while you're allowed to dislike anything, you can dislike a really phenomenal show if it's just not to your taste. You're allowed to dislike things, you don't need to provide a reason to justify it. Hence why I don't personally like aesthetic animation memes. I still think that they have a place in our community where they are very helpful, even if it's not something I would personally click on or create myself. It doesn't have to be. It still has a right to exist, and it still is absolutely beneficial for some animators, even if it's not to my taste or my friend's taste. Because really, they're not to my taste. Anyway, yeah, those were my old videos. They were pretty cute videos, weren't they? These videos were known at the time as rant videos. It was a predominant side of the animation/art community where nerdy artists would sit down and either talk about a franchise or have a conversation about how they feel about something that might be going on in the art community/animation community. A lot of it stemmed from DeviantArt rants, but as ranting became a predominant side of the art community, eventually some more non-nerd, kind of non-artist individuals also decided that they wanted to step foot and create solely this kind of content. What a lot of people don't know about the art commentary community is that it actually mainly stemmed from the animation meme community before it branched off and evolved into an entirely different species that is now known today as the ACC.
There's a subcategory of content in the art community called the art commentary community. This type of content is exactly what it sounds, where it's basically somebody laying out their opinion in video format on a topic of discussion.
This video you're watching right now is actually a good example of art commentary.
It's been around for a really long time. The reason why I like making art commentary is because it's fun to sit down in a community of people that share similar interests as you and basically have a conversation about something that you have interest in, essentially.
But more recently, the art commentary community has actually developed a reputation,
not just amongst bystanders who don't participate in the community, but within people who are in the community themselves, where people have began noticing the increasingly toxic tendencies that a lot of people in this side of the community have.
I was hesitant myself to perpetuate this reputation onto my platform because
I didn't want to stigmatize people based off of just the content that they create. But honestly, I'm starting to see it too. You're not going crazy. The art commentary space is just really weird now. It wasn't always this way. A predominant figure in the art commentary space used to be Nani. She was a good example of an individual who seems to be in commentary to want to do the right thing and to want to have conversations that are productive and help make the community a better place.
Like back in the day when she stood up for Sashly, a 12-year-old that everybody was just kind of bullying at the time.
Or when she called out Crystaleye, who was an active predator in the community that really needed to have attention drawn to his actions because he was very dangerous. What I'm trying to say is that it used to be a very productive space, but it's becoming increasingly obvious that the environment that we're cultivating is becoming more and more toxic. Now, it didn't become this way overnight necessarily.
Ever since the beginning, there's always been bad actors in this commentary community, but not to this extent.
A lot of people here have expressed distress and confusion over the fact that they feel like they can't rely on any of the content creators here.
A lot of people feel like they can't rely on content creators to practice what they preach and to reap what they sow.
A lot of creators here have been heavily criticized
for behaving morally superior while not following through in private.
To that I will say, it is probably best not to develop an emotional attachment to a stranger that you don't know just because you like the content they produce. Putting someone who is definitely going to have flaws on a pedestal probably will set yourself up for disappointment. But even with that said, it's no secret that this side of the internet is quickly cultivating the reputation of being kind of like two-faced high horse standers with a grandiose sense of moral superiority.
And as somebody who's been a part of this corner of the internet for a while, I definitely felt the environmental shift too.
I don't know if I would say that this is the exact reason as to why it's gotten this way.
But this is the impression I got after observing and participating in this part of the internet for a while. As the commentary community grew and the audience grew, more and more people became hungry for this form of media. Now commentary channels are trying really hard to pump out this content as much as possible. So the environment has shifted from being a conversation where nerds can sit down and talk about how they feel to a weird moral war zone.
An environment where we all sit down and have a conversation about something
shifted into a weird game of chess between content creators.
The environment has essentially transitioned from conversation to content. And as creators emotionally detached from the content they were making,
it's gotten to the point where a lot of content creators benefit from each other's mistakes
and end up profiting off of calling out other people's misfortunes.
Now this in itself is already an extremely toxic environment,
as it's definitely caused a lot of people to go on little online treasure hunts through people's Twitter accounts to try to dig up as much dirt on people as possible so they can either make content out of it or establish their sense of moral righteousness to themselves and other people.
It's like a way of establishing to yourself and to other people that you have strong morals.
And all this environment does is just create conflict between human beings.
Conflict that doesn't even have an end game or a purpose or a reason to be. It's just noise. And if you wonder why so many art commentary creators are really unreliable and immature, this is why. This environment, from what I've witnessed, mainly appeals to hormonal adolescents with strong opinions, and, at least from what I've witnessed, really stunted adults. Now, this doesn't apply to all commentary. There are a lot of sophisticated art commentary channels who put together really rational and well-done takes, or just commentate on more lighthearted topics and, like, review old media with their cute little talk sprites that they drew. So,
I don't want people watching this video to get the impression that the entire art commentary space is all inherently negative, or that I even dislike the space. I mean, I'm here, aren't I?
But aside from the wholesome commentary, in terms of like online callouts and ranting,
unless we're talking about like really serious situations that involve like predation or harmful content or just something
inherently problematic, like truly, that actually needs to be addressed.
A lot of the mindless online bickering
doesn't really appeal to a rational content creator, so they likely won't partake in it very much, which is why the commentary space is full of so many people who are just very unreliable and don't really practice what they preach. And if you ever wondered why you feel disheartened over the fact that your favorite commentary channels are turning out to be untrustworthy, this is why. Because the environment itself is inherently toxic, and it doesn't really appeal to very rational or mature minds. When it comes to morally policing other people, the people who are the loudest are usually the ones projecting the most. As humans, we reflect what we project. So the people who make commentary who are the most morally righteous and preachy and loud are usually projecting the most. Now, I don't want to make it sound like all art commentary nowadays is, like, bad. And I don't want people to get the impression that I don't like this side of the community. Because again, here I am. There are lots of really good commentators who put together sophisticated takes on circumstances in the community and are pretty interesting to have a listen to. But this isn't the majority of people who like to sit on social media and talk about drama. There is no denying the increasingly toxic environment that we're cultivating over time. One that I contributed to as a teenager, and I'm now starting to grow out of it more the older I get. Any form of content that is solely relying on profiting on other people's misfortune is going to be an unhealthy environment one way or another. And I honestly find it kind of sad seeing so many people push other people away because they don't agree with someone's take or they have a different opinion. This online echo chamber seems to be cultivating these expectations of perfection out of each other. It's just sad seeing everybody implode on each other and attack each other instead of just embracing the fact that we all have something really fun in common, which is art. That's a beautiful thing. And while some things definitely need to be called out, like predatory behavior and mistreating other people, I still wish that we would be more compassionate when the circumstances aren't as dire as that. Nobody is perfect, so unless the circumstances are dire, we need to remember that. So we're all just creating an unrealistic expectation for ourselves and other people. And when your expectations are set really high for other people, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed by everyone around you. And you're setting yourself up to be disappointed in yourself because not only can you never achieve perfection as an individual, but no one else really can. Because it doesn't exist. And it seems to be impacting the way some people who run commentary channels view themselves. Of course, you should always be mindful of how your actions may impact people, especially if you have an online platform. And you should always hold the people around you accountable if they're doing something that's potentially harmful. But if this woke keyboard warrior lifestyle is getting to the point where it's creating self-hatred or misanthropic people loathing, then maybe we gotta step back and ask ourselves if this is really a healthy way of viewing the world. And I wish people would see that, not just for the people around them, but for themselves, so they don't feel like they have to be perfect. And this has gotten to the point where I found comments under my videos that contain perfectly reasonable takes about art commentary related subjects, and then people have to write in brackets and clarify that they're not trying to downplay things and that they're not meaning to do anything wrong. Because this community is just laid out eggshells for us to step on. It creates self-doubt and a sense of character dysmorphia. It's just so sad seeing this group of artists that are tearing each other down rather than building each other up over expectations that are unrealistic anyway. Because we've cultivated and normalized an environment where we profit off of other people's misfortunes and bad decisions. Basically, my conclusion for this side of the community is that the commentary format is incredibly valuable and useful in terms of conveying the way you feel about something. It's nice to sit down and have a conversation, but the more people crave this kind of content, and the more people try to rush out this kind of content, the less of a conversation it becomes, and the more it becomes a weird, counterproductive battlefield that has no real end goal or end game, and is just about tearing other people down. And it affects the way we view other people and ourselves. And it sucks. And not only does most of this online noise only really appeal to individuals with juvenile habits and worldviews, and it makes outsiders of this community look at us in extremely unfavorable ways, because can you blame them for finding it questionable? It's really muddying our reputation. Basically, I think that art commentary is good and it has a place in our community, but if you look too deep into it, it gets kind of chaotic and toxic and a little exhausting. And I wish people in our community would talk about it more instead of getting defensive whenever it's brought up, because the first step towards fixing a problem is addressing it. If you make commentary and you don't have a sense of moral superiority and you genuinely believe the things that you're saying and you truly want to make the community a better place and the stereotypes don't apply to you, shouldn't you be open to discussing it? Because it kind of is a problem. Anyway, you get my point. I still love art commentary, but those are some of the more negative aspects of it. Like everything in life, there's good and there's bad, but right now in the art commentary community, the bad is extremely rampant. So I hope that as a community we can collectively acknowledge it and steer away from these toxic behavioral patterns just by acknowledgement. Instead of getting defensive and being like, I'm not like the bad artists on here, I'm one of the good ones. And I'm sure you are one of the good ones. At least I like to think so. But that shouldn't take away the fact that as all communities have toxicity, ours is rampant right now. And the first step towards fixing a problem is acknowledging it. May we grow, and may we improve, and may the community become safer each day. My homie pointed out that this is an important topic to cover, and while I was going to add this point to the ACC section, it's a big enough issue that it warrants its own segment. There's been an uprising of underage users pursuing the creation of commentary content. I was absolutely one of these kids putting themselves in the spotlight, and seeing this pattern continue into other children's journeys is rather concerning. Because I can say from experience that creating commentary content at a young, vulnerable age does more harm than good to you and other people when you're in this stage of life. Young, old, boy, girl, or in between, this is the scene. Preconceived prejudice from viewers having heard gossip and being entertained by their already existing conclusion and assuming so much out of so little, or just under the impression that the person they're talking about is dangerous and they think they're doing the right thing. That's a whole other can of worms. It's not the healthiest space for a hormonal adolescent. It can either result in parasocial behavior developing and being normalized for the kid due to the exposure of this kind of behavior, or if the kid has a strong moral compass, it could result in intense distress when faced with this toxic culture. Like, the person witnessing it wants to fix the imbalance of justice, even though you really can't control other people, which will only lead one into a dark state if they're unable to regulate how often they look at this mess. Either that or the kid's the one receiving the horrible backlash. Fortunately, seemingly the average person doesn't really care enough to invest real energy into verifying the narrative that they're about to comment. But do keep in mind that half of these people likely heard that this person is a danger and feel like they're doing the right thing and have no malicious intentions. So there's no one really to blame, it's just an unfortunate culture that we've cultivated. Of course, anyone able to see these problems wants change, and nobody wants to look at this burn the witch saga without hoping things can get better in the near future. But I'm gonna be honest, I'd be surprised if it shifted. I've been trying to invest activism into speaking against blind gossip since I was a little kid, and I'm far from the only one that has done this. And if anything, the environment has gotten worse since then. I don't want to assume it'll never improve, but the internet comment sections and channels that center around gossip seem to be hostile and parasocial just by their very nature. Of course, there's plenty of empathetic quality buried under the bile, but that's definitely not the majority. And let me tell you, if you're a minor, I'm sure you already have shit going on in your life and your head that overwhelms you just from the very nature of being an adolescent. Not only is this the prime time you're gonna make bad choices, but this is by nature a miserable, dramatic time period for anyone and everyone. You don't need parasocial weirdos gossiping about your mundane mistakes on top of the psychological crisis you'll inevitably be facing from puberty. Being a teen sucks on its own. Everything negative that happens to you at this stage in development results in amplified emotional arousal, and you'll be prone to being impulsive and reactionary, which is nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone was a kid at one point. Everyone's been in the stage where they feel like they're being diminished or belittled by being told that they're young. Just because you have yet to pass these years doesn't make you any lesser. And that feeling that you get from hearing this, that feeling of being diminished or put down or dismissed or infantilized by being told you're just a kid, that is the illusion that comes with the hormonal imbalance of puberty. Once you're out the other side, you'll realize it's true. You weren't lesser than anyone, you were just in a temporary premature stage, which isn't an indication of lesser personhood or lesser individuality, just that you needed to wait a little more time to blossom. You just have yet to grow out of that feeling of wanting to be a big kid that most kids experience. I certainly experienced that. So trust me when I say this isn't intended to be like an instance of an adult telling kids to get lost because they're not big enough for this. I just want this to be advice from one human to another, warning the youth that while I was in your shoes, I ended up regretting my involvement in commentary later on. Because there was no way I could change my age range or change my biology or nature. I just needed to wait a little time for it to pass. This environment of parasocial antagonizing in this community is something people have been fighting against for years, and it's not going anywhere, no matter how much we want it to. And if you're underdeveloped and still learning, and end up stuck in these circles with these eyes constantly watching and scrutinizing your every move, it impacts your development. development. It impacts the way you view yourself. The harshness of dozens, maybe hundreds, or in some cases thousands of strangers telling you who you are and what's wrong with you will shatter your psyche and self-perception while your brain is still developing it. It impacts your brain that is still developing a sense of self and is already vulnerable and raw with hormones. Humans are pack animals by our very biology. What our peers say impacts us, and if our sense of self is still in the works, being exposed to a group of people pointing out every imperfection is not good food for thought. If your sense of identity isn't finished construction, it can contribute to and help develop a small voice inside your head that you're basically the worst thing ever. While this can be the case for any kid making any form of content on the platform, not just commentary. Commentary is undoubtedly the most detrimental content for a kid to become intertwined with. The reason I think a lot of children enjoy making commentary is because when you're a prepubescent, we tend to subconsciously base our understanding of the world on what our parents and or guardians tell us. But when we hit puberty, we end up unlocking the ability to develop our own independent opinions. It's new territory for us, and it's exciting. When this begins happening, we get the temptation to want to share what's on our mind, and we want to explore our cognitive processing. Show our opinions from the rooftops, if you will. It's normal, and it's why teens are fairly opinionated, which is one of the universal reasons I think a lot of minors in this community gravitate towards producing commentary content, at least in my opinion. It feels good to explore your newly developed cognitive processing skills, and I see it as a subconscious mental exercise. It's normal to find the premise of commentary appealing at this age. I certainly did, but I think it's important to wait until you're an adult before making commentary and find other ways to do these exercises. I certainly wish I had. It would have done so much good for my psyche and so many others if we had simply waited until we were adults before stepping foot in this aggressive, accusatory, antagonistic environment, because most people aren't like this. If you go outside and touch grass, nuance is much more present. But if you rely on the internet for socializing, you might forget that most people aren't this angry and hateful and quick to assume the worst. If you're in commentary, there's two things that must be mastered. You need to be able to understand that a handful of your audience will have parasocial behavior that is abnormal and not your responsibility, and you'll have to accept this in order to keep your self-perception healthy. But you also need to simultaneously be able to take criticism when it is necessary, because none of us are perfect, and this is how we improve as people and as public figures, by embracing each other's feedback, even if it's critical of yourself. It's a slim, slippery challenge to balance between self-respect and reception to reasonable feedback. And it's something that might just take a fully developed brain. It's not fair to expect yourself to do this if you're a juvenile already going through your own crap. It's like punishing yourself. Now, I ain't your mama. I can't tell you what to do, and there's never gonna be a point in time where if I see a kid in commentary, I'm gonna wrinkle my nose and shake my fists at the sky like some old fuddy-duddy just because I think it's a bad idea. However, I do in fact think it's a bad idea from personal experience. So while I don't want to make you feel alienated, and I definitely would never judge someone for being a minor in commentary, I am in fact concerned for you. I just don't think it's healthy for anyone underage to be in commentary. Whether your commentary subjects are lighthearted or serious, people here are harsh no matter the severity of the topic you're covering, and it's hard to cope with while you're still learning about yourself and the world. Hell, at 19, which is still pretty fucking young, I still question if I'm cut out for it. But I will say, the younger I was, the more confident I was. All of my friends can testify experiencing similar things. Second-guessing yourself is definitely a part of growing up. You end up developing a critical second conscious, which is why I end up cringing when I hear teens talking about being super confident and certain that they're cut out for this. Like, that is a product of your youthfulness. The older me and my friends got, the more we second-guessed everything we did. The younger we were, the more inflated our sense of certainty was, essentially. Now, just to be real, there's absolutely no way that this single commentary video that I'm making is going to change or reverse the uprising in kids making commentary content. Therefore, I feel the need to really hammer in the point that if you do see a kid creating commentary and you feel like you need to approach the situation, you need to be kind and respectful and an actual adult about the situation. We cannot just turn kids being in commentary into the new controversial thing like tracing used to be back in the day, because I see a lot of shit like that happening. How dare you be in commentary, kid? You're evil! Kids being treated like shit is the reason why they shouldn't be in commentary in the first place, so don't proceed to treat them like shit while telling them they shouldn't be in commentary. I'll reiterate, there's nothing to be ashamed of if you made the decision to make commentary as a kid. I just warn you, it might do you more harm than good. Anyway, thank you for listening to my dumbass rant. Sorry if it sounded patronizing or something. I just don't want to see you get hurt, because expecting yourself to put up with a really harsh, hostile environment during the toughest time in most people's lives, it's just like hurting yourself. Anyway, thanks for listening. Now, some people might be rather confused by this segment and what I'm trying to get at, so I'll do my best to lay this out as clearly as I can to the best of my abilities. Most of the time when an individual talks about them quitting a genre of content they're producing or quitting their YouTube channel, usually it entails all or nothing, hot and cold. Either they're making the content or they're not. But I don't have a straight answer for you guys. Half the time I just make the content I feel like making in the moment. I don't take my own channel very seriously. It's just a hobby. The content I produce is pretty spontaneous, in opposed to the average YouTuber, whose content is usually pretty structured. I've just recently found my interest drifting away from creating ACC content and AMVs. But that does not mean that I'm never gonna make a commentary video again, or an animation with somebody else's song ever again. I definitely don't take my channel that seriously. It's just kind of a goofy hobby. Therefore, I'm not strict with the genre of content that I produce. The only reason why my content's been consistent over the years is just because my interests have been stagnant. Basically, the usage in this section of the word quitting is essentially to communicate in a sort of classic YouTuber-esque sort of way to my audience that if the main content you're interested in that you subscribe to is just commentary and animations of other people's music, just a heads up, it's gonna look very different from now on. I'll likely still lurk in the community a little bit because these are my roots. This is like my hometown. And if I ever feel the urge to make a commentary video in the moment, I might do it. But because my interest in content production has shifted into something a little bit different, I don't know if it will be accurate to label it as art community related. It'll still be art and animation related, but there are lots of different genres of content that are art and animation related. They don't necessarily correlate or have anything to do with the ACC AMC. Therefore, I think it's important to just let my audience know that the content that you initially subscribed for will be replaced with something that doesn't exactly resemble the animation meme community or the art commentary community anymore. I still might drop the occasional video like that if I feel like it. But I do know my brain pretty well, and I can kind of feel myself drifting away from the desire to produce the content regularly. And due to this, I thought that maybe the most fun way to make this announcement would be the video where I talk about how I feel about the community, because then I don't have to leave things on a sour note. This place is pretty awesome. There are positives and negatives, like everything under the sun, but it's a fun place. Again, I'm not strictly turning into a whole different direction of content, because again, I don't take my channel that seriously. I just produce whatever I feel like in the moment. So there's no strict never making commentary or never animating another person's song again. My ADHD chipmunk-brained attention span just happens to be shifting somewhere else. Now you may be wondering, what exactly are you going to be making in the future? You don't get to know until it's posted, then every pony is gonna know. What I will say though is that it'll still follow the same elements and structure that my older animations have, but I'm tired of animating and creating things that are completely mangled and tangled and intertwined with the legality of other artists' 90% of the content that I produced previously all is linked and tied and intertangled in the copyright of other artists' work, and I just want something that is like my own. I do have one more animated music video that'll be coming out, and it's the one that you've been watching the speed paint of this whole time, but other than that, that's it. Also, most of you guys know I've been on hiatus for like ever. I hope I didn't get your hopes up by uploading this video. You might think that this video is a comeback or indication of me returning. Well, if anything, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to declare my hiatus is going to be much longer than expected. I don't know when I'm going to be back, but I am chronically offline. Anyway, thank you for listening. I do appreciate you tuning into this dumb, self-centered yap session. It does mean a lot. If you're predominantly interested in ACC content, you should probably unsubscribe. Thank you for watching!